Hello everyone and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ads Lyson. On the podcast this week, I have a podiatrist, surfer, BJJ Purple Belt, and the owner of Warrior Grips Socks. This podcast is quite interesting and close to my heart because we talk about injuries, recovery, and how someone from the podiatry world can help people on the jiu-jitsu mat, but also help on surfing trips, and how they developed a sock to help prevent injuries during yoga and jiu-jitsu. So, please enjoy my conversation with Sam Chidwick. Sam Chidwick, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's lovely to meet you.
And I believe that you're down at the coast at the moment. You had a bit of a break over Woolacombe Way.
Yeah, I've just had my 37th birthday yesterday, and my fantastic wife booked us 3 nights in the Watersmeet Hotel, just around the corner from Woolacombe in near Morthove. So, yeah, I mean, I was watching the surf forecast all week, and it was ridiculous, sort of 60, 70, 80 mile an hour winds. I actually made a decision when we came down. I didn't even bring my board. I took the roof rack off so that the car was more fuel efficient. And didn't even bother with my board. But I must admit, I actually, on my birthday yesterday, I went around to Staunton because I thought there might be something happening there a little bit cleaner, and 100% wasn't. But I went in anyway and just enjoyed the white water for a couple of hours, which was lovely. But rented a board from the guys there.
Yeah, I'm quite fickle with stuff like that now. Even though I only live an hour away, I just can't be. I can't be driving down anymore and jumping in the water when it's like that. It's it breaks my soul. Like, I mean, I've driven down over the last couple of days to Exmouth Beach, which is kind of like 10 minutes from my house, but it doesn't break that well because there's some sandbars that cover it and the estuary mouth. But yeah, I mean, I think if I'm desperate, I'll go down there. But yeah, apart from that, it's I just wait for the good swells to come through, you know.
Mate, I was the best surfer in the water, though. You know, it's easy when you're the only one, and you're just dodging kite strings and windsurfers, basically.
Yeah, I tell you what though, like Exmouth is one of those places that it's really heavy into water sports. You know, there's a lot of paddle boarders. You've got the Bridges that own Edge Water Sports. They're like
Right.
world champion kite surfers, and I almost kind of nearly gone down the road of becoming a kite surfer or a wing foiler, but can I really justify that with my own hobbies through surfing and jiu-jitsu, is buying lots of different things for that? Probably not. I haven't got enough room in my garage, I don't think.
That's the issue, isn't it? I actually lived at university with a guy who was a kite surfer, and I mean, the equipment is unbelievable, and the cleaning and the prep and just everything like that. I just completely put me off the idea of it. I must admit that the little wings seem quite cool. I've seen a few guys down at Port Call with the wings and the foils, and apart from looking like they would absolutely sever your leg off if you got in the wrong place, they look pretty cool, and they're definitely very mobile on them. But I'd imagine it's quite a steep learning curve.
Yeah, I mean all that sort of stuff is quite expensive to kind of keep up with the modern times. I remember when I was younger, I started surfing when I was 14, but I've been sailing little dinghies and stuff since I was in single digits, and windsurfing was kind of the follow-on from that, really. But just to keep on top of like boards and sails and stuff like that, and masts and booms, and it'll be exactly the same with kite surfing, because each year the developmental side of the equipment develops so much, is that you'll be out of season within a couple of years, and they're not cheap. They're like 500-600 quid. You know, it's like buying a new surfboard every 2 years just to try and stay in line with what everybody else is riding, which is a good thing if you're a maker and you're a brand. But apart from that, you're just emptying your pockets every couple of years.
Yeah, and there doesn't really seem to be any sort of second-hand market that I've come across in that area yet, because it's relatively new. I mean, I think if someone tells me they want to get into surfing, I sort of say, well, look, just like rent for a couple of sessions, and then just go on Facebook Marketplace and grab yourself a second-hand mini mal or something. You can pick, or like a bic, like an 8-foot, 9-foot bic, and just like something indestructible that you can smash into the rocks as you're walking down the beach, because you're just going to do that for the first couple of years. And yeah, get used to it. So yeah, there's not really that much. It's like I say, it's a steeper learning curve with that sort of thing. You've got to go all in, haven't you?
Exactly. So Sam, you are a multifaceted kind of person. You're a podiatrist, BJJ Purple Belt, and just started your own brand of a grippy socks called Warrior Grips for jiu-jitsu and all other sports. Let's just tie into the podiatry side of things. So is that kind of like your main current job at the moment?
Oh yeah, that's been my career since I went to university at 18 years old. Went down to Southampton to study podiatry, and haven't found a way of getting out of the profession yet, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm still there. And as I say, 37th birthday, it means I've been doing it longer than I've been, for over half of my life now. So yeah, you could say I'm career long. It's one of those ones, actually. A lot of people, the first thing people say is like, how the heck do you get into a job like podiatry? I mean, for anyone who's doesn't know what it is, which I'm sure a lot of people, it's specializing in the foot, ankle, and lower limb. And I'm predominantly a sort of sports podiatrist, so I specialize in sports injuries or musculoskeletal conditions of the lower limb. And yeah, it's a bit of a weird profession to get into, but my brother is a physiotherapist, and I was sort of interested in healthcare and thinking about careers in that field, sort of a vocational career. I guess a little bit like yourself with the Marines, it's sort of that kind of opportunity to go into somewhere that's going to train you, and then you've got a job at the end of it. It's a pretty, it's a good opportunity. And yeah, so did that for 3 years at university, then started working in the National Health Service. I did 13 years NHS, where you really learn how to do your job. Then you come out a bit green and really learn how to do your job. And then yeah, just sort of slowly transitioned into private practice. So I now work for a clinic in Cheltenham called Superfoot, which is owned by a good friend of mine, a lady named Emma Price, who is a fantastic podiatrist as well. And yeah, so we sort of worked together now for about 5 years, and yeah, so I really enjoy my job. So I'm very, very lucky to get to work with loads of amazing athletes, Team GB athletes, look after Gloucester rugby players, England rugby players, Bristol, Worcester, sadly not Worcester anymore, but the women's team is still going. And yeah, just very lucky, and loads of injured martial artists and jiu-jitsu guys.
It's one of those things, isn't it, with the body, is that everyone kind of associates injuries with the major muscle groups. So they go like to a chiropractor or an osteopath or something like that. And when you're moving about, you forget that your knees, your ankles, and your feet take most of the load bearing of all of that. And I don't think it's, unless you're into, being a foot fetish kind of person, I guess. It's not something that you really kind of focus on. You wouldn't go to the gym and go, do you know what? I'm really going to focus on my toe strength today, or my ankle strength. It is kind of a weird one. And, going from the background that we're from, surfing and jiu-jitsu as well, the whole proprioceptive pattern and movement all comes or resonates from the foot, and the way that the toes press into a board or into the mat, so you can change direction, shoot in for a takedown, or, you're using your feet in different types of guards in jiu-jitsu. You've got to rotate your foot and use toe pressure when you're surfing, whether it's to slow the board down, to turn it. And I think it's something that I found in therapy, being a Bowen therapist, is that it all starts at the bottom. and worked its way to the top. If you have issues with your feet, with your ankles, with your knees, it all kind of residually affects everything else. So if your right foot is out of alignment, you know, your hip's going to be out, then it's going to resonate into your shoulder. I keep using resonate quite a lot at the moment. I don't know why, but yeah, it's because I'm using big boy word toilet paper.
Big boy words. 100% though. You're right. I mean, you know, look at a surfboard that's been used for a while, and look at the compression dents on the deck as well from the feet, and yeah, look at martial arts and the positions. I mean, it's weird. I mean, I was actually in podiatry, so before I started surfing. I started surfing in my 20s. I didn't start jiu-jitsu till my late 20s. So, but yeah, 100%. I mean, weirdly, my path into jiu-jitsu came because a guy arrived at I was working NHS, but I was doing sort of a little private clinic down in South Wales, and this dude came in one evening, literally just like, he's a massive guy. It's really tall, really big dude from Birmingham called Jim, who weirdly actually adds, you remind me of him a little bit, the way you talk, which is quite interesting. But Jim just sort of banged on the door. He won't mind me telling this story, but he'd had his ankle broken being taken down in sort of MMA, probably like late 40s, I guess when it happened. And yeah, he was like, dude, can you fix me? I was like, oh, you've had like a load of surgery. I'll do my best, and sort of work with him for a bit, and we developed quite a friendship. At that point, I think I just got my black belt in karate, and Jim sort of said it turned out that he's basically a sort of self-made millionaire concreter, had this massive business, and then was just a philanthropist with it. He'd bought an old police station and converted all of the old sort of offices and cells into, just padded all the walls. And he just basically said to me, look, just come along and train, dude. Here's a code to my private gym. I don't care like what time of the day and night. Just go and train, no cost, nothing. Like such a generous guy. And in the little town of Chepstow, which is where I'm from, then there were like martial arts schools around, but I just rocked up to this gym, and there's all these guys there from like Tulare Combat and Newport MMA and things like that, who were just doing extra training in this little gym. And they absolutely, I thought my karate would be handy against them, but they absolutely bent me in half. And I'm sort of rolling around on the mat, getting armbarred and choked out. And it was a bit like that scene in The Matrix. I'm like, you know, I'm going to learn jiu-jitsu. It was very much like I enrolled in a new club that was setting up then in Chepstow within the month, and took my black belt off, never wore it again. Put a white belt on, started a new sport.
It's quite fun. There's a guy that lives opposite me. I don't know whether he listens to this. He might do, he might not. And where I've set up my school, academy, whatever you want to call it, club. I don't really know what I call it. I don't know. Anyway, round the corner in the village hall, they do is it called Shokan karate?
Shotokan, yeah.
There you go. See, yeah. That's how much I know about it. And he got his black belt last year, I think. And during the summer, he walks across the field because, you know, where it is kind of right in front of a big playing field where the kids play. And he walks across. And one day I was putting the mats out, just finished, and I was just putting some music on. I looked out the fire exit door, and he's walking across. And I went, Ed, because he was wearing like his karate, you know, kimono, walking across the field.
Walking across the field in his gi and black belt.
Yeah, but it's literally so where we live is literally you walk out of our house, down a little path, and then it's like it's like a less than a minute walk. He's not walking around town in his gi, because that would be weird. I'd even said that was weird myself. So he's
John Danaher does it, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he's a legend, mate. So I think you can let him have that. So Ed's walking across the field, and I through the fire exit door, I go, Ed, do you want to come in here and do a real martial art that works? And he just looked at me, and then we had a little bit of a laugh about it later. And I said to him, you know, why don't you come and do a few classes? And this is kind of the same for a lot of the guys that have done judo previously. And, you know, I had another guy come in asking about his son starting training and stuff. And they're all very much like, oh, I'm too old now. I'm too old. And he's like in his late 50s. was like, mate, you're never too old to start stuff like that. I've got a guy that started training with me about 6 months ago. He's been a judo black belt for about 20 years. His son's a brown belt, and he instructs at Exeter University. I think his dad does as well. And yeah, it's really interesting because they both came along and they started training. And because there's not that much nawaza now, or groundwork in judo, it's kind of been taken out. I suppose it depends which gym you train
school,
at.
but yeah,
they're coming in. Their pinning stuff is really good, but once people escape out of it, they're flat on the ground. You're taking the back, and it's quite interesting. I think they got kind of quite humble to it, and but unfortunately for them, they got kind of injured. Training with some bigger guys, because like, as you know, jiu-jitsu, when you first train, being the spazzy white belt, you don't really have any kind of control over your limbs or your aggressive movement patterns. So they got injured, and they haven't been back for a month or so. But yeah, it was just interesting seeing new guys from different martial arts training, like you say, and it's quite humbling, isn't it, when you think you're all right, but then you're not.
I mean, I can't thank that little bunch down in Chepstow. I can't thank them enough, really. I mean, particularly Jim, because but saying, funnily enough, talking about the white belt, rolling with a new white belt, and we were doing one of the first sessions there. We were doing sort of little 7-ounce MMA gloves on, so it was sort of grappling from knees, but striking as well, because Jim was always very much like, it keeps it moving. If you can throw a few hands in as well. And I think I just pulled guard. He was basically just pulled guard, like double overhooks, and pulled him in, and just accidentally nutted him and split his eye open. And that's probably my third session. So yeah, thank you very much for giving me access to your amazing gym for free. I'm gonna send you to A&E. But yeah, I think he just chucked a bit of super glue in it and carried on. He was that sort of guy.
Chick stick scars anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And that is 100% a phrase he'd say as well. Are you from the Midlands?
Yeah, I am. I originally I grew up in a little town called Redditch, just on the outskirts of Birmingham, just south of the M42.
So that explains why you sound a bit like him. That's quite funny. Yeah, I'll get him to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, well, I moved away when I was 17, 18 when I joined the Marines. So I've got I got a hint of Devonian in there from being away from 20 years. Yeah. So yeah, my monotonous tones of being a Brummie to some where's that to is it comes in every now and again, which is kind of weird, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, try being English but living in Wales for most of your life. Yeah, it's the same thing.
No, I think you can get away with that.
Yeah, not such a contrast, maybe.
The surfing side of things, then. So you said you were living around the Porth Call area. Is that when you decided to get into surfing? Because I know you mentioned you were about 20 when you got into it.
Yeah, I think it was like early 20s. Yeah, my other brother, not the physio, but the other brother got into surfing, and I think I came down to probably to Woolacombe for a weekend, and just borrowed or had a couple of little bodyboards and was just sort of doing that. But he had a magic carpet, it's like minimal, and I had to go on that. Loved it. Rented a foamy the next day, and then I think just cracked on like that. So it was around then that I realised that there was. So Chepstow's probably about on a good run about 45, 50 minutes from Rest Bay, Porth Call. So you can I used to bomb down there as often as I could then. Even sort of go down there, crack a dawn with a couple of friends, and then get back in time for work. Then drive all the way up to Gloucester to the hospital for work. So that was my sort of, when you just got that endless energy, haven't you, at that age. I've never like progressed at surfing that much. I think I just kind of got to like a level of being like okay, and then just plateaued. But I'm kind of happy with that now. I mean, I'm not like pushing it hard. It's sort of like fourth or fifth sport on my list probably, but then in terms of lifestyle, probably one of my absolute favorite activities. So it just always puts me in a good mood.
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite fortunate in the fact that I started surfing when I was 14, like I mentioned, and when I was started in the Marines, I spent a couple of years up in Scotland, which I didn't actually surf up there then. I just drank a lot and played rugby.
Mm,
So I was about 85 kilos, 10 kilos heavier than I am now. So, I was quite big, and I just got into that kind of culture of, working and, working hard and playing hard. And it wasn't until I actually came down to the South Coast and I got drafted down to Plymouth that I realized like I just kind of wasted a couple of years where I could have been surfing some absolutely amazing waves on the east coast of
mm,
Scotland, all to myself, or maybe with a couple of guys that actually surfed up in Arbroath. So yeah, I mean when I came down to Plymouth, that was like in 2003. That's when I properly kind of sunk my teeth into it, because I was, at an hour's drive from Newquay. Bantham was around the corner as well, which is just kind of east of
mm,
Plymouth. That was a 40-minute drive from where I was based, and we just spent literally the whole time, driving down to the coast whenever it was good. And I actually had a conversation about this yesterday, saying that I wasn't one of these stereotypical guys that joined the forces and wanted to read books about guns and weapons and learn about it all. It was kind of weird. Like every time I finished doing something, I just went back to my room and I put a surfing DVD on or read a book and about surfing, and was looking at the forecast. And back then you didn't have surfing forecasts as it was, because the internet
mm.
wasn't really kind of viable. It was very much about like reading the newspaper, and if you remember Big G's forecasting, where you had to ring an 0800 number. No, it wasn't a porn line, it was an 0800 number for a forecast. And yeah, it was kind of like a different time, an interesting time, really.
Yeah, a bit more like almost as well, like a bit more pioneering, trying to find like, now it is everything in around the UK pretty much. I know on previous episodes you drop in about little secret spots and things like that, and there's a couple of little places in South Wales that friends have introduced me to, where you have to sort of trespass across old steel works and various things to get there. But yeah, generally the UK is very well plotted, isn't it? And it's like yeah, it's I can imagine that would have been quite a cool time. Similarly with jiu-jitsu, I guess it had that time a couple of decades ago where that was the new kid on the block, and it was these, oh, there's a purple belt up in 2 hours away. Should we drive up and train with that? We train with that purple belt. He's like been to Brazil or something like that. It's surfing was a bit like that, I'd imagine.
I think so, at the moment in this country, especially, there are certain places in the UK that are very much like that. I've got a friend that's from up by Norfolk, and he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and where his family are, there's nothing within a 30-mile radius. You
Mm,
go to some of the smaller, I mean, even down where I am, there's kind of a big sort of like gap, um, just outside of Exeter. My
right.
friend opened a gym up in North Devon, and there wasn't really anything there. There was like a little MMA place, proper spit and sawdust, and there was
Mm,
nothing really up there. But there is now. There's a couple of gyms up there, so there are places around the country that have kind of still to be introduced, um, to kind of, I guess you could call it like real world fighting. I suppose it depends how you
yeah.
coin it and how you train it, but something that is, not your stereotypical, and don't, shoot me for this, but your stereotypical karate where you're just punching the air, and
Mm,
then actually when it comes to an actual conflict, you might be, pretty good at doing like these katas, but they don't actually work because you don't do it in that physical environment, or like sparring
yeah.
MMA. Even just putting 5-7 ounce gloves on and some shin pads, and kind of semi going for it. I don't think you really see that, because the kind of clientele that people are pulling in with karate, especially from what I've seen, is very kind of like your generic average human that goes to it, that doesn't particularly like bodily contact, and if they did, they probably wouldn't go back again. I don't know, I'm stereotyping here, by the way.
No. I mean, 100%. I can't. You can't speak for every club in the country, but yeah, let's put it this way: the school I was at had, pretty much a session every night. There'd be 10, 15, 20 people at every session. Then once a week they did a full contact sparring class, and there'd be like 2 of us or 3 of us. But then everyone would get their belts at the same 6-monthly or 12-monthly interval, regardless of whether or not you sparred, because the belts were just based on kata and pattern, that sort of thing. And the interesting point about that as well, which I've learned since. I mean, I just got into it because I've loved martial arts since I was a little kid. Star Wars geek growing up, loved the Jedi, that whole thing. Really I got into Aikido a bit at university, and sort of just love that sort of warrior ethos, hence the branding in the socks as well. And yeah, just kind of there was a school near, a bit similar to what you're just saying. Karate was basically, there was a school near my house, so that's why I picked that. Little did I know there was a Master Sken Academy at Thai boxing not too far away from me too, and that would have put me on a completely different trajectory. I've been lucky enough to do some Thai boxing out in Thailand, actually, on 2 separate sort of trips, and that's the real deal as well. I mean, God, those guys are pretty insane. But yeah, I think weirdly, I mean, talking about sort of the spread of jiu-jitsu and the spread of surfing, and obviously the impact the internet has had. You can now go and watch techniques with, on YouTube. You can go and learn. I could say, my bottom turn was really crap yesterday when I went in the sea. I go watch like 10 YouTube videos on with somebody on my exact surfboard or same length surfboard and watch their body position. It's insane what you can do. Your kata in karate was YouTube. That was how one sort of group of martial artists who came up with a new technique could then travel across the country and demonstrate that to somebody else, or teach that to somebody else using a pattern. And that was a repeatable form of, at that point, of teaching. So that was the YouTube of the day almost. And the weird thing that I've learned with a lot of the kata, that where you are punching the air, or perhaps it looks like you may be doing a block, and then actually it's all been taught wrong over each time it's taught. It's taught incorrectly, probably, and passed on incorrectly. And there are purists out there who try and maintain these forms, but basically what looks like a strike was actually a throw rather than a strike. But because you don't have an opponent, it's taught then as a strike. So as I've started to learn jiu-jitsu, and I've done a little bit of judo as well, I've actually realized that a lot of the karate, it's all the same movement. It's all the same body movements. Of course it is. It came from the same dudes. But it's all just like spread in these different ways and being taught in different ways. So yeah, that's a massive thing. But like you kind of touched on a point a minute ago, the fact that jiu-jitsu, and the same with MMA, the fact that its realism is you've got someone's weight against you. You can feel the pressure of a technique. Everything is different. Kata, you stop your kick on the center line because it looks nice and neat. At any striking martial art, you kick through your opponent. You don't try and stop on the center line. You're looking to kick through. So it changes everything when you've got somebody resisting you and somebody fighting back.
The warrior socks, or warrior grips, sorry, not warrior socks, because it's a sock. I just thought, warrior grips. Yeah. They've obviously derived from ankle injuries on the mat and surfing. What was kind of like your thought process behind it and starting that up?
So yeah, definitely they came from jiu-jitsu 100%. So I'm kind of like the on mat medic at the club. A lot of the time, if somebody hurts there, you get a lot of injuries, foot and ankle. People are often saying, "Oh, can you have a look at this?" or kind of like drain someone's cauliflower ear if they want, or various little things that I've ended up doing. And then I've just had sort of a string of people, guys and girls from the gym, come into my clinic because they've twisted their ankle. A few years ago, I got thrown quite heavily, fractured my big toe. A few months later, then fractured the other big toe. I think I scanned it at the clinic. I had some like 6 little fractures in the, you know how small those little bones are, and they just don't bend now. So I started wearing some sort of, I tried a few different brands of, you can get martial arts socks, gripper socks and things. I tried a couple of different brands, not sort of naming names or anything, but a couple of them, the more sort of neoprene materials, my foot just started to sweat inside, and you sort of then lose traction. A couple of them just fell apart or ripped apart really quickly. So I just thought there must be something good on the market. That typical sort of thing. Couldn't find something good. So I think my wife said to me, well, why don't you make it? Because it's your job. You understand the foot. So yeah, started going back and forth with a load of manufacturers, and then one sort of company stood out. They just really kind of got what I was looking for with the sort of the placement of the grippers. For instance, when you get some gripper socks, the whole bottom or all up the side is covered in these grippers, which then is fine when you're stood up. But in jiu-jitsu, as soon as you're on your back, you try and slide your foot through under someone's, say you want to retract your foot quickly from someone's armpit, throw it over their neck for a triangle, just a basic move. And you've got grippers all around the side of the sock or on the side of the sole. It then gets trapped there. And so I sort of just was going back and forth with these guys, like, oh, could you move them in another 5 mil? I'll try those ones. Oh, could you move them in another 10 mil? I don't want them all the way to the back of the heel. I don't want them all the way to the front of the toes. So yeah, they just really got it. And we went back and forth. And then one day I had to order 750 pairs to take the minimum order quantity. And I now feel like Del Boy. I've just got boxes of socks in the spare room, and I need to sell them. That's the goal. So yeah, I've built a website, started a social media campaign and various things. And yes, I started selling them in person to the club and to like a couple of local gyms. And I'm being so chuffed with the feedback. Like everyone's saying, quite a few people saying, why, you need to sell these for more money. People saying, look, I'll buy 1 pair, and then messaging me a couple of days later and saying, can I have another 5 pairs? Just they're really, really positive. Yeah, just need to take it to the next level now.
I think there's kind of like a multifaceted branding thing you can do with them there, pushing them out to different sports as well, I guess, especially, even karate, even, doing katas and movements on old wooden gym floors, stuff like that, so they don't slip over on their ass.
Well, I got a couple of design, different designs that I've sort of locked in with the manufacturer, but every time you order them, you've got to order a minimum amount, and so it's that reinvestment side of it. But yeah, I've got a couple of designs which will be slightly different for striking, because you want the grip in slightly different location, perhaps. But yeah, 100%. And yeah, I kind of had a guy come back the other day saying he started wearing them for rugby. I've got a couple of people wearing them for yoga. Getting into the winter, obviously, so a lot of gyms are just cold. There's part-time gyms. Someone flicks in 5 minutes before you start and turns the gas heater on, which has barely had any impact by the time you get in there. So just sort of from that perspective, loads of other sports. Hopefully, the Rugby World Cup. You say you play rugby. There's a lot of teams wearing grip socks now inside the rugby boots, and I think a lot of footballers are starting to do it. Just to that interface then between the foot and the boot has no room for movement, room for friction, which is quite a cool angle that I can push into as well, hopefully.
Apart from the grip on the bottom of it, what other kind of properties do they provide?
So in terms of, first and foremost, was material selection, like using the sort of the blend of materials that I went for, so that they were breathable rather than this sort of more neoprene, almost like some of them almost like a wetsuit boot. So your foot just starts to sweat. So I really wanted them to be breathable, but without compromising on strength. So there's sort of material selection, mostly cotton, but like the weave of the mesh and things to allow it to be breathable, prevent blistering and that sort of thing. But I've then also added midfoot, so over the top of the midfoot and around the ankle, extra material and sort of elasticity woven in, so that they're quite compressive. And that's one thing I think if somebody does buy a pair and tries them on, they feel like when you first put them on, they're like, these are really tight, but they're supposed to be. It's sort of compressive to help prevent ankle sprains or midfoot pain that you can develop. Anyone who's trained jiu-jitsu or judo or anything like that for a long period of time, you know how often you can rip your little toe back or you just get that pain. So many common foot and ankle conditions that come from training in these sports, and it's just giving you a little bit of protection with the characteristics. So I've just thought about common injuries and how I can sort of combat them a bit.
Yeah, I was wondering whether there was any stability within it as well. I was I don't know. I said we've talked about this the other day, but I generally was. We were talking about I used to have these jigsaw mats that I'd use for guys, and just from the 40 mil like jigsaw mats. I got them.
Yeah.
I can't remember where I got them from now. Anyway, but it doesn't matter. And what I found was that the friction on the mat was there was quite a lot of friction on it.
Too much.
Yeah. So when we were doing takedowns, especially like some of the judo guys, and then I started to notice it, there was quite a few like foot injuries. And then there was mate, this was savage, like savage. So one of my biggest students, we were just doing like some warm-up drills, like tapping the shoulder, sprawling. And all he did was he was in his fighting stance and he stepped backwards and his big toe went down first and snapped clean in half. But it was an open fracture as well.
Oh, God.
So
right,
okay. He stopped and went, "Oh, ads, yeah, I think I've done something." So he went over
the adrenaline was there for a minute.
Yeah, well, no, because he was a Marine as well, like really big lad. And he went and sat on the side. And not that makes any difference whether it's a Marine or not. If you hurt, you hurt. Doesn't matter who you are.
Pain thresholds maybe.
Yeah, he went over to the side and I was like, right, just bend your toe a little bit and see if you've got any movement. And then he was trying to bend his toe, and where it snapped was where the cuticle is on the big toenail at the very bottom. There was like a little cut across the top of that, and it wasn't bleeding. It was just kind of like opened up a little bit, and he couldn't really like move his toe that much. So anyway, I went to kind of like just kind of feel it, mate. It was like how can I explain it? It was like a really floppy sausage, like from that cuticle bit. Like I'm doing it with my finger. It kind of like just bent. Oh mate, it was
the whole toe,
Yeah, like right at the very end, it was just kind of like, imagine getting a biscuit, like, and you snap it, but like because it's held together by the skin. That was it. That was all that was holding it there.
Yeah, I mean, in that instance, obviously, you've got the nail plate itself can become completely detached. But that's actually where my fracture was as well. So I say somebody sort of hit an uchimata on me. And my right foot was the foot that was still, my left foot was taken up in the air. But I ended up sort of countering it and pivoting. So both of our body weight went through my right big toe on the apex of it. And similar sort of thing, just it lasted like I was on point in ballet type position, and then lasted for about a split second, and then just bent over and took like, I don't know, probably like 28 stone combined through my big toe. So and that's, those things, like, they heal, don't get me wrong, they heal, but they never heal quite the same. Like, you never get your full range of motion back. And it actually goes back to your point earlier. That's partly because nobody goes to the gym and rehabs their big toe, right? I tell people to all the time, I'm forever writing plans. And I must admit, I've been a good person myself. I do my own sort of toe rehab in that sense. But it's a bit of the body that once the pain's not there, you just kind of crack on. But then the next time you get put in that position, you've not got as much, your range of motion's poorer. I mean, you know this with your therapy that you do. Once somebody's had an injury, they're at a higher risk of getting another injury in that same area. So that's where again, tying back to the socks, it's that it might be that injury prevention. It's very hard to say if something's preventing injury. I've not done a randomized control trial on these looking at injury prevention. I've just had a lot of experience in the field. But if you've had an injury once, then it's that sort of protective mechanism. Let's face it, who wants to be off training jiu-jitsu because you've hurt your big toe? Like, That's just not just not a thing. You don't want to be doing that.
I think that's something that's really overlooked again, is the proprioceptive training and the strength that
Massively.
comes with things. Because I did a like a surfing movement instructor course about, well, it would have been a year ago this month, with a guy called Rodrigo Perez. In he trains some of like the high level surfers in on the Gold Coast.
Amazing. Yeah.
And all these kind of types of movements, they're all very much like proprioceptive stability: hips, ankles, knees, shoulders, neck, wrists, elbows. And they're not really complex exercises, but when you get people to do them, you can see that they don't have any stability. For instance, one of them, there's just like a little crawl where you keep your knees 90 degrees, your hands underneath your shoulders, and you're doing really, really small, like half an inch movements, really, really nice and slow. On your toes, like I said, your knees just kind of like, a centimeter off the floor. And the whole idea is that you can see someone's hip stability, whether their hips are swaying or not. And you try and tell people. So I do this as a warm up in my club. And the amount of people that struggle with doing this, even just doing like 5 or 6 kind of strides with it, it really shows like the poor strength that people have in these areas, which, if you have that proprioceptive stability, once the bigger muscle groups tire, the proprioceptive muscle groups, the smaller muscles within the joints, take over, and then they tire really quickly because they're only small. And that's when you start, getting your musculoskeletal injuries. And what I used to do before I'd go on surf trips is, because I wanted to be in the water quite a lot, and I wanted to maintain, a good endurance in the water. I didn't want to be the guy that was getting out first. So what I used to do was, all of my kind of strength training that I used to do like on a bow shoe ball or a balance board. So whether it was bench, I'd lie on a bow shoe ball and do bench through that, dumbbell training. I almost got to the point where I'd put I found a MDF plank, put it on the top of an old school gym vaulting box. You remember those ones that used to have from doing gymnastics?
Yeah.
And then I'd put a ski erg like right next to it, and I'd have that, that postural stability where you're arching your back, your heads are up, but then, using the ski erg to pull down with, and then you'd have that stability where you'd have to correct it, get your hip work going in your neck and your shoulders, just to maintain that position on there. And I think a lot of people just kind of either, one, don't have the knowledge or experience about anatomy and physiology to do that, which you probably know yourself. A lot of people really don't know that unless they're into it. And secondly, it takes effort and time, and people don't have the time these days to do stuff like that, to, for injury prevention, or even just anything like that, really.
It's interesting as well, isn't it? I mean, that element of the functional, there's actually someone I've chatted to quite a few times, Surf Fit Academy, Ollie, his name.
Yeah, I know Ollie.
Okay, cool. I've chatted to him a few times about it, about that sort of thing. And yeah, basically, it's actually, he's very sort of anti balance boards and balance work and that sort of thing. So he's like, well, that's not, research doesn't support that side of it, which is quite interesting. And it's that sort of that finding that perfect functional training has to be a combination of many different things. Like you say, it takes time, and it also takes it takes experience, and it takes the sort of willingness to try something, find it's not effective, and have the confidence to say, well, actually, this isn't right for me. I'm going to change to a different exercise. I'm going to change to a different, how am I going to use my half an hour that I have this evening to maximize my outcomes, and fight the aging process, and take into consideration previous injuries that I've had, and the fact that it's not just surfing, it's jiu-jitsu as well, and it's also, I want to be able to go on a road bike ride on the weekend, so yeah, it's a balance, a massive balance. And actually, you mentioned the word, proprioception quite a few times. Once you've had an injury, there's quite a good body of evidence to show that your proprioception possibly never fully returns, or is one of the slowest things to return. Once you've taken out your lateral ankle ligaments because you've gone over on it, then you're significantly more likely, despite doing rehab exercises, you're still more likely to go over on that ankle again, because the nerves, the mechanisms that work, i.e. the proprioceptive mechanisms, basically lose the ability to know where your foot is in relation to your body, and so don't fire the muscles quick enough to stop you going over on that ankle again. And it is, I mean, we're constantly, we understand really such a small amount still about the body in the grand scale of things and how things work, and disseminating that then to a client or to the public, it gets even harder, doesn't it? That you're doing your therapy. I mean, is your therapy very much hands-on, or do you set people exercise programs as well?
No, so I don't have a gym. I've got a therapy room that I rent, and that's it. So the Bowen technique therapy is all about fascia. So using fascia to be able to release muscle tension, and when you get injured, say for instance you have a dead arm, or you pull a muscle, that tension becomes really, really tight within the muscle tissue because it's protecting it. But if it's really, really tight and it's protecting something as an automatic response, then your body's never going to be able to repair it or heal it, because it's not going to be able to put the blood flow in and get rid of all the toxins and all the other nasty stuff that's inside there that holds on to the injury. So that's basically what my sort of therapy does.
No, I've read bits about it before. I mean, interesting. I mean, probably the most common musculoskeletal condition that people come to podiatry for is plantar fasciitis.
Oh, mate, don't start with that.
and I'll use inverted commas, because 95% of the time it's not plantar fasciitis. It's you're probably looking at plantar fasciosis or fasciopathy, or possibly a small fascia tear. And this is umbrella term, when actually people talk of it like it's inflammatory itis, but it's not actually inflammatory. It's to do with the ability of those fibers, as you're saying, to sort of almost glide over one another. And and I mean, I use I'm actually training at the moment down at Bournemouth University to do sort of diagnostic ultrasound scanning. So I use ultrasound in my clinic to actually, so when someone comes in with heel pain, stick the probe on and actually measure the thickness of the fascia, which has been really interesting, that the different thicknesses of it versus perhaps how long somebody has been suffering with the problem for, and actually how infrequently I see any indication of inflammation. It's very infrequent that I see inflammation, unless it's more of an acute tear or partial rupture in the fascia. But if I just see a thickened fascia, and I don't see any inflammation or any evidence of a tear, then I'll go to his extracorporeal shockwave therapy, which is basically, exactly what you've just described. You're trying to flush it out, blast it, create inflammation, and bring new sort of blood flow to the area, which I'm sure, I guess that's got similarities to your techniques in that sense.
I find that the majority of kind of foot injuries and stuff that people get, this is an opinion, it's not fact. There's probably research into it. I've not read it, but I would generally say that it's down to the footwear that people wear, and the trainers that people wear with all the soft support that is suggested, inverted commas, that is there. Nike Air Maxes are there to cushion the heel. Well, the foot and the body are not designed to have that cushioning. So when you the worst thing that I hate to see is when I'm walking around and I see people wearing like rocket dogs or rugs or something like that, and they've trodden the back of the heel in, and you can see the wear on it, and they've had them for about 2 or 3 years of their favorite shoe, and then I look up and I look at like the bone, like say for instance, if they've got wear on the outside heel, you look up and they've generally got bow legs, their knees bend inwards, and I'm like, oh my God, your posture is shocking.
Well, I mean, you look at, and so going back to the big toe, if somebody has reduced range of motion at their big toe joint, then basically, and they are perhaps then they're sort of I mean, I'm going to just use terms arch. There isn't actually an arch in the foot, just to be super, but we use the term arch to describe the bit on the inside of the foot. If that is sat in a lower position, so again, I'll use it air commas of flat-footedness, and that sort of thing, then to compensate for that, that failed posture of the foot and the fact that you can't walk through that big toe joint, you then externally rotate. So you turn your foot outwards to compensate for that. And instead of rolling through the big toe, you roll across the big toe. So if you've had a big toe joint injury from jiu-jitsu and it doesn't bend properly, instead of rolling through that joint, you roll across, which is why people get that lump of callus on the inside of the big toe joint very often, or perhaps why people develop bunions, that sort of thing. And as a result, exactly like you said, one of the first observations is they completely collapse the outside heel of the shoe down because they're landing on that outside edge as well. So they're those people who always wear their boots out on the outside. And 100%. Like, but interestingly, I'll flip the whole thing on its head, because you said at the start about a lot of things coming from the foot. I always train podiatry students who come and sit in with me, and I try and work like this. I try and look holistically. So if somebody has got a flat foot, I hammer home the glute strengthening work and and all that, because if you're talking about genu valgus, where the knee is like that sort of knee rolling in, then yes, you get the glutes, the external rotators of the leg firing and working better, particularly in runners, for instance, get that warm up involving glute recruitment exercise, then suddenly the knee's in a better position and suddenly the foot's in a better position. So, it's a bottom down top, bottom up, top down approach, isn't it?
It's an interesting concept, really, because a lot of the clients that I get to come through my clinic have either got neck issues, upper back, shoulders, or the predominant one, I'd say 90% of my clients that come through have lower back issues. Well, I just kind of stand them up and do a few observational sort of like things, moving them around in their natural sort of like supine position, and 9 times out of 10 they've got really tight hip flexors because of being sat down all the time and being in a static position for a long period of time, and their posterior chain is really poor because it's constantly lengthened. So I just get them to do a few kind of hip stretches, and one of the things that I laugh about when I say it, and it's kind of like I could just press record and play the majority of the time when people come through, because I kind of use the same analogy of an elastic band. You push an elastic band together and you hold it there for a long period of time, and then you try and stretch it, it becomes kind of brittle and tough, and then it'll snap. That's kind of what happens when, your hip flexors, if you're sat in the seated position. And the same with an elastic band for your posterior chain. If you sat down all the time, you stretch an elastic band all the way out and you hold it there for, 2 or 3, 4 weeks, couple of months, and then you let it go, and it'll come in a little bit, but it will stay lengthened, and it has no way to contract itself back together. And this is the reason why people get that lower back pain from a anterior pelvic tilt position, because it pulls the hips back, which then pinches on their lower back. But if they've got some form of sciatica that are kind of like a causality of this as well, they might choose one leg or the other, which then resonates, there you go, using that word again, resonates down through into their knee, their ankle, and gives them foot issues, which, like you're saying there, it's not just about looking at a specific issue. It's about looking at, the body as a whole. And I find this quite an interesting kind of thing when I watch, because I'm quite a bit of a pest with surfing technique. After doing a podcast, a couple of years ago with the guys from Ombi, and when I watch people when they surf, some people get up really slowly. Some people, are quite sprite and they can pop up, quite well. And then the people that complain about that, they can't get up quick enough, or they're kind of blaming the board, or their surf wasn't a good session. It's all down to kind of their mobility in their joints aren't great because, surfing might be their only sport outlet, but because they don't do any strength training, because there we go, inverted commas again, they don't have time to train it or any kind of form of flexibility, then it really reduces their ability to be able to perform to what they want to.
Yeah, 100%. You hit the nail on the head there. Definitely. You're talking about the elastic band. I mean, yeah, I've got like foot models in the clinic that we've sort of stuck, like kineso tape and elastic bands to exactly that reason. Just I find that the ability to, if you can explain that to somebody in the clinic so that they leave not with a set of exercises, not with a pair of orthotics to go into their shoes or whatever, but with the understanding of why it hurts, that is so powerful. And you talk about your plantar fascia, that heel pain again. Every 9 out of 10 times it's worse with that first step in the morning. Get out of bed, put your foot down. Ow, I can't walk. You loosen it off a bit, and it's like, yeah, well, when you sleep, your foot's pointed, it's relaxed, it's all shortening, and as soon as you stand, it's suddenly under that tension. Yeah, you're 100% right, and it's that. When we think about movement, we think about the movement, but there's also the pre-movement and the post-movement that go into that movement, and how important, how crucial that is as well. It's funny, but again, elastic bands. Our one of our coaches a couple of months ago, Jack Benfield, who's a black belt, one of our coaches, he's just said during training, spring can't be a spring if it's already been sprung. And I was like, yeah, like it was his way of explaining that exact theory, and I think quite a few people, everyone laughed at it, but it was also just like, that makes complete sense. It's like if you're in the bottom of side control and you're trying to, and you manage to get your knee back in, and you're looking to sort of re-guard, if your leg is completely compressed against your body, everything's too compressed to work. And if your leg is too far away from your body, you've got no potential movement. So it's all about, and jiu-jitsu is about finding that midpoint. And then I would argue, I'm by no means any authority in surfing, but like I would argue the same point, that your pop-up, depending on your timing that you pop up. I mean, when everyone's on the beach, paddle, like you get your typical sort of, you line all the foamies up on the beach for the people, and they get you paddling and then popping up on the beach or popping up on your board. It's not practical, because when you're in the water, the board moves away from you as you pop up as well. So it's that timing. It's knowing that, right, I'm on that point of the wave, I've paddled in, I've caught the wave. I know that my board is about to drop away from me. So I don't need to smash like 100% effort into lifting my body up. I just need to let the board go away from me and replace that empty space with my body. And that's how you sweep someone in jiu-jitsu. If you hit a scissor sweep, you don't move yourself so much. You do move yourself, but it's a combination of moving your opponent, moving yourself, but you're also creating a negative space that you just replace your body with your opponent's body. And it's that same principle, isn't it? It's all biomechanics, it's all movement.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And moving into the kind of the breathwork space that I've been kind of working on as well, it's really interesting because I get the guys when they come onto the mat, and if someone has, a couple of little niggles, I do a couple of little techniques on them, and then, they don't say anything because Bowen's really subtle. And then, 5-10 minutes later, they're back on the mat again, and they don't say anything because they think it's just kind of rested, and they've just come back into it. And it's the same with the breathwork side of things. I try to incorporate it a little bit with the warm up, and it made me chuckle the other day because it's all down to, I believe that all these kind of things are how open you are and to different ideas and concepts, but also kind of how open-minded you are as well. And don't get me wrong, I'm not picking on a specific person here, but one of my students the other day, when they were walking around and they were running around, I was getting them to do like small breath holds, and everyone was kind of like laughing, but just doing it anyway. And then the guy goes, "When are we actually going to do some jiu-jitsu?" And I was like, well, it was funny because he'd had the neck to say it. Bearing in mind, it's my club and I'm teaching.
Yeah.
And secondly, what is one of the most fundamental things that you do in jiu-jitsu and surfing is your breath. If someone's in a reverse kezakatame position like this, the traditional judo position, and they're compressing on your lungs, and you only use your upper lung cavity to breathe, then that lower half becomes, redundant, and you're not able to use that to its full capacity. So if someone's sat on the top part of the chest, you can breathe with the bottom part of the chest, same as knee on belly. If someone gets your knee on belly, like right down by your navel, you don't necessarily have to breathe from the lower part of your diaphragm and your lungs. You can do small, short breaths up in the top part of your lungs and still be able to, it's going to be uncomfortable, but maintain that, and not tap to kind of the pressure. And then the flip side of it as well, you go surfing and, what's the main thing that stops you drowning? Breathing. When you wipe out and you have like a set after set on the top of your head, what are you doing? Breath holds. So if you're training your CO2 tolerances, and trying to explain this to people as well is quite interesting, and something that I'm having to develop slowly to kind of put the education through, instead of going, stop being bone mate and just fucking do it.
Some people will respond to the education. Other people will respond to you being coach and just saying, just do it. I know this is the right thing for you. But no, I mean, you're literally teaching survival. Like you're teaching that person how not to tap from side control, or how not to tap from knee on belly, right? So 100%. Yeah. I mean, that's, I'm sure when you're having like a big rolling session and you're a bit knackered, that you've got somebody who's, you want a bit of a rest round, so you just pass their guard and exactly that, sit in reverse scarf hold and just rough their lungs for a couple of minutes, and then you're teaching them, man.
Exactly. Mate, we've been going for about an hour now, so
it's flown by, isn't it?
I know, right? Warrior Grips, where can people go and get a pair? Have you got website addresses, Instagram, all that sort of thing, and also your podiatry side of things as well, so if they're in the Cheltenham area?
Yeah, cool. So warriorgrips.com is the website, and it's a pretty self-explanatory. Go and have a look on the store. There's loads of info on there. I'm writing a page at the moment about common foot and ankle injuries as well in jiu-jitsu, and in anything really in sports. So there'll be some more info on there soon. There's a couple of different deals on there for sort of bundles of socks, and if anyone wants to use, I'll stick a discount code in, Grumpy Surfer 10. So if anyone wants to use that, get 10% off their order as well. And appreciate any sort of follows on Facebook and Instagram and social channels. I've yet to delve into the world of TikTok and all that kind of stuff, but the more you read, the more you realize that's the way you got to go these days to sell any products. But I just want to build I want to build a community around it as well. So, I'd really appreciate follows on social media. That sort of thing is really well received. I have another website called Podipedia, PODIPEDIA.co.uk, which is a directory of podiatrists around the UK. I run it with my friend Emma, who owns a clinic that I work for as well. And there's loads of sort of free information on there about foot and ankle injuries and things as well, if anyone's interested. And if wherever you are in the country, you can go on there and find a UK, like a HCPC, so a Healthcare and Professions Council registered podiatrist who we know will be trained to a certain standard near you. But Superfoot in Cheltenham is my clinic if anyone's up that way as well.
Awesome, mate. Sam Chidwick, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast, mate.
No, really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you so much for having me on.
No worries, mate. And that's it. If you like the podcast, please like, share and subscribe on your podcast provider, or leave us a little review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.